Welcome to the Jess Larsen Show, where I interview innovators and leaders. Today on the show, I got Lloyd Roberts. Lloyd, thanks for doing this.
Yes, happy to be here.
So quickly, will you give us just the brief overview on LoanPro, the new book, and the work in Cambodia? And then I've got a lot of questions.
Yeah, so first LoanPro, we're a loan servicing software. We're based out of Farmington, Utah, so just about a half an hour north of Salt Lake. And we are one of Utah's newest unicorns. So pretty excited about that. We love the Farmington area. We work with over 1,000 lenders throughout the US and Canada. Effectively, we're their operating system. That's LoanPro. Got some great team members. We love the culture here, and we're growing. So if you're looking, we're growing. In addition, let's see, G Cubed recently wrote a book, completely different topic, has nothing really to do with the loan servicing space and the technology space, a little bit, but mainly it's about personal fulfillment. And it's a formula that anyone, if they follow, they can find and become truly fulfilled. So it's been fun. It's only been out since August 23rd, so not very long now. And then last that you listed there was the public charity, and it's called Become More. So a similar vein throughout all the organizations that we're a part of how can we become more, right? It's much less about the word have, and it's much more about the word become. And this charity is focused on two things. One, it's primarily focused on lifting our own level of gratitude, growth, and giving. And when I say that, I mean us in our local communities. What can we do to elevate those and become truly fulfilled? And then second is lifting those that are in Cambodia out of extreme poverty. And our goal is to lift 100,000 Cambodians out of extreme poverty. Not to the level that we are, but we want to, if you can picture a ladder and you take off the very bottom rung, we want to give that to them. We innately have that already here in American culture and American society and in our welfare programs. They just don't, right? So if they default on that microfinance loan, or if somebody gets ill at the wrong time, they literally are kicked out of their house and they go live at the dump. And there's just not, it's really difficult to get out of survival mode when all you care about is feeding yourself or your child for the next day. So the objective there is to give them that first rung and through education and opportunity. And it's a new effort. It's only been around for, in this year, 2022, and we're excited to see where we can take it.
Yeah. Well, we met at the Utah State Entrepreneurship Board. Are you on the board as well? I know you're at the board meeting, but were you guys just presenting, or are you on the board?
Yeah. So Dr. Mike Glauser invited us up. That was our first time there, but we've been invited to participate more. So we're looking forward to it.
That's great. They got me to join the board last year. And
Yeah.
it was kind of like, oh, okay, but it's actually really fun. So I'm
Good.
trying to do more to be helpful there.
That's awesome.
So so many questions, but I want to stay on Cambodia for just a minute.
Okay.
When you guys look at what was already being done, and maybe talk a little bit about your brother and his PhD and kind of how that informed your thinking, can you talk a little bit about, there's so many good causes out there, how you guys chose not just Cambodia, but the approach you're taking there?
Yeah. So first, what do you do when you want to impact the world in a positive way? We believe that, one, you don't have to go across the world to do it, right? However, our desired impact is twofold. So first, of course, is increasing the level of gratitude, growth, and giving for ourselves, those we love most, and for our local communities, because really everybody wants to be fulfilled. They just often are tricked on what is necessary to achieve that fulfillment. So in general, we feel like we Americans, we have an abundance of resources for the most part, but Cambodians don't. But they do have something that we often don't have an abundance of. Second year in a row, they're just ranked the happiest people in the world. And it's a little bit odd given that 24% of their whole country lives in extreme poverty, with that marker being $1.90 a day per household. Usually that's some grandparents, some parents, and some kids as well. So it's a little interesting that we often allude to, hey, I need more stuff so that I can be more comfortable. And when I'm more comfortable, I'll be happier, when that's clearly not the case for those in America or those in Cambodia. So for us, it was kind of two extremes. In addition, my older brother, he learned the Cambodian language about 20 years ago. He fell in love with the people, and he's been over to Cambodia a couple dozen times over the last couple decades. And he knows the language in and out. And so when we thought about this, what can we do? We don't want to just be a charity that is helping people by giving them stuff, right? I mean, that's one thing to give someone a fish. It's a very different thing to teach them to fish. But we wanted to have the primary effort be to change ourselves, and do it in a real palatable, helpable way. And so that's the double initiative. We look at, okay, here's us, and we're wanting to increase our fulfillment, and here's the Cambodian people. And if we can take our resources and if we can take their gratitude, really bend them into more of a circular combination, we can do this loop where they benefit, we benefit, they benefit, we benefit. And when it's like a spiral in the upward direction that should get bigger and bigger as on each rotation.
No, it's exciting. Super exciting. Well, let's talk LoanPro for a bit. Can you
Okay.
talk about um, you and your brothers and kind of parlaying the success into the next one and kind of that journey to the $1 billion valuation here?
Yeah, so the journey's been an interesting one. My two younger brothers, Rhett and Ben, we started business, boy, almost 20 years ago together. And we didn't have any money, very little resources, but we had a lot of passion and very little education on how the business world worked. And so a lot of our school was the school of hard knocks, right? We'd try something, and then if it worked, we kept running that direction. If it didn't, we would iterate. So we ended up doing a number of things: real estate company, cattle ranch, oddly enough, windshield repair, franchising, with those little pop-up tents all throughout the inner Mountain West, and working with insurance companies. And then we ended up starting an auto dealership. So that kind of started working for us. And so we popped up more auto dealerships across the Wasatch Front. And then we started a lending company to help those that were underserved and unable to get traditional financing. The lending company started doing better. So we took the profits from gig one and we used those to launch gig two. And then so we really kind of rinsed and repeated that process. We took the profits from the lending company and we used those to launch our first version of loan servicing software, actually called AutoPal. And then in that process, we learned a bunch of things we had done right and a bunch of things that we had done wrong. And we ended up launching our newest version of the loan servicing software that has been the one that's worked out best for us, called LoanPro. It focuses more on enterprise type lenders. So we process about $1.2 billion a month in payments through the software. And we do all the calculations for them. We're the tech that allows them to know who's current, who's delinquent, what the principal balance is, all the communication with the borrowers to stay in front of them, all the back end calculations so that they can display on their app, what the breakup between fees, interest, principal, all that fun stuff. So we're really the core operating system for over 1,000 lenders now throughout the US and Canada. And it's been a fun run. It's not a sexy business. We're not, customer facing. It's really more of a B2B play. And we're excited that we've finally reached the $1 billion valuation mark. That's pretty monumental for us. Just a little company out of Farmington, Utah. But our ambitions are still much more aggressive. We have some super exciting things in the pipeline. We've just patented some brand new ways of doing calculations and really personalizing the experience with credit cards to bring to consumers. And some of the brightest minds in the industry have given us the nod and shared with us that these are groundbreaking and revolutionary ways to bring lending to the masses. So those are kind of a preview of what's to come in 2023.
Well, we're gonna have you back on the show once you announce it.
We're excited about it. It's been 2 years in the making, and it's going to really change the relationship that consumers and businesses have with that piece of plastic they hold in their pocket.
Yeah. So I've been doing business with my brother for 18 years now,
Okay.
and I get a lot of comments of like, "Oh, what's that like?" And there's definitely friction at times because we're such polar opposites personality wise.
Yeah.
But I love it. Like, I honestly don't want to run anything without him. Sounds like you guys have been able to keep it together.
Yeah. Yeah. The truth is, Rhett and Ben are just such quality people. I know they have my back 100%. And it's most important for me that they know I have their back 100%. So if there's ever anything that's close to the line on, if something's falling my direction or their direction, like them, I try to do the same of, make sure that I'm always providing more value and make sure that they know I have their back. Now, as all three of us have done that over the last 2 decades, especially when we didn't have anything. It's one thing to say, sure, have that thing fall your way when it doesn't change your life. But 15 years ago, we just didn't have anything. We tried real hard and it didn't work. We learned a lot, but it wasn't translating to the bottom line. And they showed their character real well back then, and they continue to do so now. So it's really a pleasure to work with them. Frankly, it's one of the reasons I'm still doing what I'm doing is so that we can build this together.
We have a couple of other partners in some businesses we have, but our one partner, he started off as my mentor even 3 years before that, so maybe like 2001.
Great.
And like I think about like why I've done so much with those two for all these years, including some just catastrophic crashes and then building back up again, right?
Yeah.
And like what you said, my version of it is like because we have partners that didn't make the cut that
Yeah.
aren't with us anymore, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I view it, maybe this is too extreme, but it's like you need to be partners with somebody who, if it comes down to do I pay my family's mortgage or do I pay their family's mortgage, I'm willing to pay theirs and then I'll go figure something out, or they're willing to pay mine and they'll go figure something out. Like that level, then this can work.
That's well said. You're right. We live the law of consecration. We really do. Other than our personal homes and our personal spouse and children, we live the law of consecration. All of our investments are together, all of our businesses together. And it allows all of our losses to be a third, right? Because we're willing to take risks and try something that you wouldn't necessarily be willing to try all on your own. But you would think that the gains would also be a third, but they're not. They're really magnified, and not just financially, but it can be lonely to win. And sometimes you need that person to be able to celebrate with. This was a hard road, and we won together, and to have that camaraderie when something goes bad, and also that camaraderie when things go good, it's been therapeutic.
So I feel like that's like one of those like first world problems where people like would have no sympathy. Like, oh, it's tough for you to be so rich, right? But I'll tell you what, like some of my very best memories in life are taking off every other Friday and going snowboarding with my brother in the Canadian Rockies. We would bring a sat phone in case there was anything that important that the team could call us. And then the other Fridays, that partner I was telling you about, John, would take the other sat phone. He did like crazy ice fishing in this like RV that has snowmobile wheels, right? And like, but having him like most of my other friends couldn't take off that many Fridays in a row. And like just all the fun things we've done around the world or whatever, it's like it's just such a given. Like, oh, we're doing this, right? Like, I love having a buddy, you know?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, there's a funny saying that money doesn't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find that out for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And like, he's better with money than I am. So I can't tell you, like, I'm the guy who like sells the big accounts that pays for everything
Yeah.
or lands the big investor, whatever. But then when like things are like completely bare bones down to the bottom, he's always got savings and he's like bailing me out over the years. So it's great. He's like my overdraft. But I want to talk about LoanPro, and specifically one topic has a lot to do with what you're doing here as the chief revenue officer. For people don't, for people not as familiar with how the tech industry is doing a lot better than the regular world that separates sales and marketing, can you explain what that is and your philosophy as a CRO?
Yeah. So tech right now, it's an interesting play, right? We're a SaaS based model, so it's all about the reoccurring revenue component, right? And so when we work with the lender, it's going to be a long term relationship. It's not really a win for them or for us if it's a 1 year gig. We want to be able to partner for decade plus, right? So we have the courtship process up front, but when we've actually partnered with the lender, for us, it's about streamlining their processes and making sure that there's triple value to what they overall pay us. So we're not the least expensive in our space. We are medium to higher, right? We're more of a white glove type of experience. But that's just considering the check that they cut to LoanPro. It's not considering all the other moving parts. They are able to eliminate human error, the decreased personnel expenses, automate processes, decrease latency, but when a consumer wants to log on an app and see what's going on. So when they look at all of that, we're typically about half of the cost of their legacy system that they've had. So on the sell side, on the revenue side, or we play the long game. Of course, we get some lenders that come in and maybe they're not very big or they're brand new, and the courtship process will be short, a couple days, pretty dang short. We've had other lenders that we just closed a deal. We were working for 2.5 years, but these are multi-million-dollar contracts that they want to make sure they're selecting the right partner. For them, it's like a marriage, right? And so they want a good long courtship. They want to make sure they know what they're getting into, because it's not an easy process to move a loan management software, and nobody wants to be the decision maker on making the wrong call there.
Yeah. Um, when you think specifically about this issue of offering more of a white glove service, a little higher end product, like, yes, maybe the total cost of ownership is lower, but the sticker shock up front might be higher,
Yeah.
right? And, it's big long-term contracts, a lot of reputation on the line for the purchaser. Um, what kind of rookie mistakes do you see other folks making?
Well, I can tell you some of the ones that we made. Uh, at first, when we were selling, our sales team and our customer service team were about the same size. And we made the software so dynamic that it was almost like you had a bucket of Legos. And it's like, look at all the things you could do. With imagination, you could create almost anything. And it was too overwhelming for them. Right. And so if they were middle of the road type of lender, then they could put it together pretty easy. But the flexibility, although wanted, once they saw all of the Legos, they were left scratching their head on, I don't really know how to admit that I don't know what I'm doing here, but this is complicated. So over the years, we've really moved into not just being a loan servicing software, but now our CX, or our customer service side, is 4 times larger than our sales side. We no longer view it as their job to put those Legos together, right? And of course, they need to be involved in the process, but internally, we don't necessarily tell them this, but internally, we view it as our job to put them together. So they feel smart. They feel like, oh, wow, the house is put together, right? And then now they can say, actually, let's swap out that block and let's move it over here, change the color. And they can do the fun little tweaks instead of trying to build the thing from scratch. So for us, that was kind of a learning curve, right? We thought initially that, hey, you want flexibility, you want options, here you go. And that's why we built a configuration first platform. So no custom programming was needed. It was like pulling and pushing levers, right? No building needed to happen. But now we actually grab the lever and we get it to the closest that we think that they will want it, based on the hundreds of other lenders like them in the platform. And then we work with them on mildly tweaking it to make it more on point for their company. So we didn't know that, right? And for us, it's not just configuration and how do you technically use the software, but we've really become more lending consultants. And you'd be surprised. We have publicly traded, couple $100 billion companies that are they're known as software companies in the financial sector that have signed multi-million-dollar contracts with us. And oftentimes we sit on panels to help them build out their next lending product. How do they monetize it? How do they take it to market? And so without disclosing other confidential information, we can share with them some trends on what lending products and flavors are working, and how the monetization works. And, we can help them see what levers are available and even give them recommendations on how to build out their lending products.
Well, it really sounds like you guys are trusted advisors for them.
Yeah, it's our, knock on wood. I don't see any wood around here, but probably should knock on some. Right now, we have 100% customer retention for enterprise clients. Right, we got big clients that are paying, well over $100,000 a month. We got small clients that pay like $1,000 and everything in between. But the big ones, we put a lot of energy into making sure that they're getting extreme value, and that it's easy for them to quantify when they go back to their board. We're paying LoanPro this, but the value we're getting is at least 3x. And it's fun to be in that position.
Yeah. Um, did I read that you guys were like in the top 25 fastest growing tech firms in the country or something? Is that right?
Just a couple months ago, we became number six, the sixth fastest growing company in Utah.
Okay.
But yeah, you're referring to the Inc. 5000. I think we were, I don't know, 32 fastest growing software companies in the country.
When you think about those type of stats compared to the competition, what do you think you're doing that the competition isn't?
Those stats are always interesting to me because they're fully focusing on the top line.
Okay.
And so we appreciate the accolade, but what we're more proud about is the profitability of the organization, because it provides and if I can talk here, the what is the word? It provides security and stability. That's the word I'm looking for. That we want to provide to all the LoanPro family team members, and that we're required to provide to all of the lender partners that use us, right? Who wants to have a core operating system that's making wild bets, that is running in the red and doing these kind of things, because you're relying on them. You don't want that phone call of, hey, sorry, the tide's turned and we're out of business. And then the question is, what happens with all of my data that's living inside of your technology? I need to be able to track and monitor and organize this properly. And that would put them in a very precarious situation. In addition, our own employees, right? We're here in Utah, and the tides are turned a little bit here as well. There's some well-known companies that CEOs have resigned. They can't do the next capital raise. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. They're laying off people. 20, 30, 40% of their whole staff is getting laid off. We don't want to be in that position. And so we've grown a little slower, although a lot of these places would say we're growing very fast, and we are, but we could grow a lot faster. But we want to make sure that we are stable in the process. So right now we're in a position where, when other companies might be laying off in the fintech space, we've never had more interviews. And I think I sat in on 4 interviews just today. And these are some quality talent that have some deep industry experience that we're privileged to even have the opportunity to interview with them.
We got one of the things, which is being profitable, right? What else?
Other things that we've done that are
Yeah,
different.
what do you attribute the massive success to?
I think that over the years, we've become very accustomed to iterating, that we're not stuck to an idea that is necessarily mine or Rhett's or Ben's, but we say it very often here that the best idea wins. We've even had brand new employees that have been here 2 weeks that came up with an idea that we implemented that idea within a week, right? So it's not duration of being here. It's truly the best idea wins. So we move quick, right? We get new hires that come on, and we just barely merged our sales team and our customer success team into a CX team. And I had one employee say, okay, great. So are we planning on rolling this out in January? Like, no, you're moving your desk tomorrow. This is happening now. And so we just move quick, and we're not afraid to be wrong, and then admit we're wrong, learn from what happened, and okay, what occurred here? Why didn't that work out? Iterate, adjust, pivot. And then over time, you end up just getting in, figuring out what your lane is, instead of worrying about any of the internal politics or whose fault it is. Just learn from it and pivot. And sometimes the iteration is never needed because you're right out of the gate. But most of the time we're wrong right out of the gate. But, every single time when we cut that in half, you might never get to the final destination, but you're going to get so close that you can reach out and touch it.
Yeah. So there's so many entrepreneurs that are fascinated with the journey and the patterns that increase the probability of getting from 0 to billion, right? And iterations and pivots and things like this are talked about a lot. What do you think the difference between what you guys are doing versus others where it's not working? Like, do you think that they're just paying lip service, but there's too many egos involved? Like, why is your version working so much faster than others?
Well, we built a product first. We refined that product, and it became a really good product. Now, did we launch too early? Well, if if you wait for it to be 100% perfect, you definitely launch too late, right? So of course we need to work out bugs, and we have thousands of hours of programming done every single week right now. So but that's just part of the process. But we did not overinflate the value that we were providing the customer, right? And some like to grow quick and then they want to mature their product later on. We matured our product first. And because remember, we had our first version of loan servicing software. And so when we spun up LoanPro kind of came out of nowhere from a lot of people's perspective. But we took all the learnings that we did from our first version with hundreds of lenders using it, and we took the very best pieces of that and built a new platform on the right tech. It's 100% API based. It's all the stuff that the big lenders really want. We finally knew what that was so we could build it correct. So we had the right product. So when we brought it to market, customers were not underwhelmed or disappointed with the offering. They fell in love even more than they thought they would, right? Sales guys say A, they're not quite sure that they're getting A. But when sales guys said A for LoanPro and they got an A plus, the word of mouth spread. And that frankly, we have been an inbound sales team even till now. And so that's a lot of referrals. It's relatively difficult with the TAM that we have, which is, it's a pretty big TAM, but not like a company that sells t-shirts, right? It's a more narrowed TAM to be able to become a unicorn on primarily inbound sales. It's primarily because of word of mouth and because of referrals. And
So when you think about that TAM, that total addressable market, and dominating so much, for all the entrepreneurs listening today, CEOs, investment fund managers that are trying to advise their portfolio companies, whoever, when you think about getting product market fit so good that you grow $1 billion company on inbound, to me, that's a signal that you're living. So all of us in the entrepreneur community know the concept. Most people do not have the kind of product market fit that have an inbound driven $1 billion valuation. Can you give us some more insight into creating the kind of product that creates referrals? Because everybody thinks they do or hopes they do, or there's so many people that think they already know what you just said, but your results would indicate that you guys understand something that the rest of us don't.
well, thank you. It's definitely been a journey for us as well. But remember, we were initially solving our own problem. We didn't start building loan servicing software because we wanted to sell it, right? Truth is, we put $1 million and said, you know what, let's build some great tech. We want to grow a large auto lending business. That was our initial intention. And when we had spent a multiple of our initial capital that we wanted to throw at this, we're like, my goodness, how much money were we spending on building this tech? I don't know if this necessarily makes sense. Then we had other lenders come to us and say, hey, you guys seem like you're doing pretty good at this auto lending thing. We want to kind of copy you and do the same thing. Can we do that? We're like, well, you got to build your own tech. And they're like, well, we're not doing that. Can we use your tech? And at first we said no. And then we decided, you know what, maybe we'll try to get a couple bucks back from what we've spent. And we edited it so that we could actually have it be a SaaS offering. But for us, it was less about going to the customer and saying, hey, customer, what's the problem? Because we were our own customer. We knew what the problem was. And of course, some of that happened as we spilled into other sectors. We have student lenders and mortgage lending companies and medical financing and, uncollateralized loans and all kinds of loans. You'd be crazy what people finance these days. It is crazy what people finance these days. It's pretty much everything. And so there's been iterations in that process, but starting off first by trying to solve our own problem and then getting that right for at least one sector made it easier for us to spill into other sectors. So we'd have a new lender come in and maybe they weren't an auto lender, but they were ATVs. Well, okay, small edit to the software. And then another lender comes in and they're personal loans. Okay, they don't need collateral attached to the account and so on. And so the software improves and grows as more lenders came in and asked us or required us to do a small tweak to the offering. We did, and that got us closer and closer to other types of lending sectors across the space. I think also we chose a niche. People say it both ways, right? A lot of the sexy part of loan servicing is upfront. How do you acquire the customer? All about origination, right? We have special sauce. This is our secret way. It's the best way ever to acquire a customer. and they pay big bucks to acquire those. But all their workflows are very different. A mortgage lender's workflow is extremely different from a hard money lender, an auto lender, or point of sale financing, or buy now, pay later, or credit card. They're completely different workflows. Well, once you've originated the note and the funds have been given to the business or the consumer, it streamlines into the core. And so we wanted to be that core. It's the hard part. It's the calculations, it's the compliance, it's the APRs, it's all the stuff that can get you in trouble on the regulation side, right? And a lot of people don't want to tackle that. We chose to tackle the hard thing and the thing that ultimately provides what we believe is the most value and truthfully is the most sticky.
Well, what I love about your answer, can I interpret it and then you correct me?
Yeah.
Okay. It just feels like you are so deep into what it's like to be a lender, and especially having been one yourself, that you're so intentional about exactly what life is like, which you'd experience yourself, that um you're like, it's almost like you like have this like sense of, as I hear you talk, I'm hearing like a culture of continuous improvement of like just getting so deep into their life from a service perspective. Maybe like sometimes I think about sales as like, well, what do I have to do to get the money? And then I think about the other sales that I've done where it's like, oh, I just really want to help people. And then money was the byproduct. Like, oh, because we got to get paid too. Do you know, like, and it sounds like just semantics, but I know my own, I know who I am when I'm selling something that's like, what's it going to take to get the money versus I just so want to help you so much. Like, you actually need this, and this is awesome for you. And I'm willing to improve it. And by the way, we charge this much. You know, like I know who I am in those two sales. It sounds like you have like a whole company of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when a customer comes to you, they often come to you and say, I know the solution. Can you do it? Right? What we try to say is, thank you for sharing with us what the perceived solution is. Can you help me better understand the problem? So we literally try to go one level higher, and it's complicated, right? Because it's really easy to say, yeah, we can do that, but that doesn't mean anything. Like they might mentally check a box, or they actually some of them have these forms they fill out and they check out these boxes, but there's no emotional attachment there. It's just comparing, A, B, C, apple, 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 check, 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 right? So we want to say, okay, great. Yes, we can do that. But I want to get to the root of the problem that you're trying to solve, because we find that about somewhere between 20 and 30% of the time, their prescribed solution, actually, there's a better way to solve the problem. So we can come to them and say, we can solve the problem through your prescribed solution by this, and do it pretty quickly. However, when we understand the actual problem that you're trying to solve, why are you solving it that way? Is that because your previous technology required you to do that? Is that because a previous employee built that workflow? What if you did this? This is what we're seeing other lenders doing. This is what's working for them. And it does a couple things. I think it helps them realize that we are actually on their side. We want to solve real world problems with them instead of just say, we're the solution, we're the solution, we're the solution, because that's not authentic. And you can say anything to me. This is my prescribed solution. And I could say, yes, we do that. But it doesn't mean much, right? But if I get to the higher level and say, explain the problem, and you can understand that I understand lending, and in many cases, I might understand your business needs better than you understand your business needs. And I can prescribe something to you that makes you go, wow, well, tell me this. Now I've changed from a potential vendor to a lending consultant. And that's the switch that we desire to flip.
I love it. Do you know the CEB book, The Challenger Sale?
Yeah.
This sounds just like it, where it's like at the end of the sales meeting, the customer feels like I should have paid you, right? Because they're like, you gave me insight into my own business that I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, it's great. And you know what? Everything doesn't work like this, right? But for the most part, our intent, and you've seen it spill into the nonprofit side or the public charity side, is to help our lenders become more, right? If they win, we win. If they lose, we might win for a short period of time. Maybe they're under contract, but ultimately we lose they don't need our services, they go out of business, all this not good stuff happens. So if we can help them win and become a better business, then they're more profitable. And if they're more profitable, they get to choose what happens. First, they could say, you know what, we want to bless our own families' lives. Or they could say, we want to bless more of our team members' lives. Maybe they hire more, maybe they pay them more. Or they also have the option to play the capitalism game and say, hey, we want to expand and grow. And that means two things. One, that means that for them to be competitive, they can extend the credit model. They can offer credit to others that typically didn't fit within the box. And that's good for the overall economy. It's good for the overall end user. If you have a 0%, if you have a zero credit score, well, your options are relatively limited on making smart financial borrowing decisions. It's like, why am I going to borrow that for 20% interest? Because you don't have any credit. Well, in this capitalistic world we live in, if companies are more profitable, they can choose to either hold on to that and stay smaller, or they can choose to accelerate their growth. And to do so, they have one or two options. They either can expand the credit model, make the options available to more borrowers, or they can stay with their existing credit model and they can pull down the cost of capital because they're already that much more profitable. Both end up trickling down to become a win for the general culture and society that we live in. It's a kind of a backdoor way of us trying to do good through the business. We can't do it ourselves. It has to come through the lenders, and it can't be artificial, right? We can't just say, save the planet, but the saving the planet costs 1,000 times more than not saving the planet. People don't adopt that, but they do adopt saving money, automating their processes, decreasing their overhead, decreasing human error and flunking an audit. All these good stuff, if you package that in with, it's also cost effective and or less expensive than the alternative, then they then just have to ask themselves, okay, great, what do we do with the added profits? Do we grow, or do we stay this size and hold it within the organization?
I really want to talk about your book because I just finished it today. Maybe before we switch gears, can you give us one more 0 to billion lesson?
Yeah, well, I got to give a lot of credit to both Rhett and Ben, my younger brothers. And Rhett's our CEO. I'm the CRO, and Ben is the COO. And I think that trust in the partnership has been really pivotal for us. We would not be here if I was in charge of the business and it was me and only the risk I was willing to bear all along, we wouldn't be where we are. But because we've been able to lean on each other through this iterative process, we have leveraged all of our strengths. And if you add us together, I mean, it sounds a little weird to say, but we're kind of a superhuman when you add only our strengths together. But that's the cool part. Our weaknesses and the things that we're lacking in some, those get offset by the strengths of everybody else, right? It's like if you're doing a golf tournament and you're taking just the very best stroke every time. Yeah. And it's like, okay, great. We're doing that every time between us three. And now that's extended to almost 200 people where we're able to take the best ball on every stroke. So that's dropping all egos. We're not an organization that has, we're not a political organization. We can move quick, and we want to have profitabilities like the big boys, but we want to be nimble like a startup. And that's a difficult needle to thread. But I don't know if we're going to always be able to do it, but we've been able to do it until now.
Yeah, it's exciting. I feel like I'm going to have to go back and take notes after this interview. I'm going to have to rewatch my own interview. I want to shift gears to the book.
Okay, great.
So I just finished it today. First of all, tell people title, subtitle, where to buy it, is their website, all these things.
Yeah, well, first, thanks for reading it and appreciate that. I know that's quite an investment of 4 or 5 hours of your own time. So really appreciate having interest enough to do that. It's called G Cubed, and it's the only formula you'll ever need to become personally fulfilled. So completely different space than a software as a subscription or a tech company, but it's something that's been near and dear to my heart these last couple of years. I've spent thousands of hours of not work hours thinking about researching, learning, making sure that I believe in these different principles, and then finally decided to put all these thoughts and ideas and this formula together. It's it's been a discovery process for me. Frankly, I don't take credit for any of the things in there. And they're, in my opinion, they're eternal truths that come to be through people just deciding to look at it and find it, search it out. This is just a way of organizing the information. So for me, it was like you're wanting to bake a cake, right? You want to bake an amazing cake. And you already know that some people out there have been successful at baking a delicious cake, and you've seen it, you felt it, you've experienced it before, but you don't really know how to do it. You know some of the pieces, and then you go meet with these chefs and they say, have you heard of salt? And they tell you all the amazing things that salt can do and how it works in food. And they talk about sugar, and they talk about flour, and they talk about chocolate, and they talk about all of these cool things. And you're getting all excited. And these are truly, really exciting ingredients. And then you say, great, well, let's make the cake. What's the recipe? And it seems like in the normal marketplace, the answer is, well, everyone's cake is different. So you got to build your own recipe just through trial and error, figure it out. You know the ingredients, so it shouldn't be that hard. And to me, that's what it's kind of like out there when we talk about the category of personal fulfillment. It's easy to talk about ingredients and be like, yeah, I can see how that ingredients plays a role in my fulfillment. But there has to be a recipe, an exact formula where you can say, mix these 6 ingredients together and stir them, and then drop in these 2 ingredients, and then pop it in the oven for 45 minutes at this temperature, and then pull it out, and then mix these 3 ingredients and smear it on top. Well, if you do it wrong, if you put all the ingredients together right away and put it in the oven, now you have the frosting baked into the core, and it just doesn't really work. So this was my attempt of making a very simple recipe.
Which I've got to tell you, from the outside, that sounds like, how are you going to do that? But now that I've read the book, I really believe it. So can you talk about the way that you think about gratitude, growth, and giving?
Yeah. So a little bit of background. I rewind 20 years ago, I really wanted to become financially free, and I was passionate about it. We put in a lot of time. We were working 50 to 100-hour weeks every single week, right? And it didn't work. 5 years of working so hard, and it didn't work. And I often was worried how we were going to put diapers on our kids' butts or pay the mortgage. And it's stress at a weird level. And I know there's probably a lot of your listeners that understand what that stress is like. It's a taxing experience, right? I thought in that moment, if I had a bank account full of 7, 8, 9, 10 digits, zeros in my bank account, I would have that, just that awe factor that we're so sold of as soon as fill in the blank, then, and that's what we were supposed to obtain, right? You hear it in retirement all the time. As soon as I'm, 59 and a half and I retire, then, almost like that is the full objective of this life. And then a couple years ago, I was finally in a financial position that if I never worked another day in my life, I could have lifetimes of ahs. And it was clear to me that that's not where fulfillment came from. And then on the flip side of the coin, I have a younger sister, 2 years younger than me, that's been she was sick for the bulk of her life. And the last few years of her life, we didn't know day in and day out if today was her last day. Heck, it happened so often that when she finally did pass away about 2 years ago, we were surprised that she passed away, because the previous year she spent over half the year in the hospital. She didn't die. She seemed almost, even though doctors said that this would probably be her last week multiple times, is like, well, she never died. But she finally did pass away, and it was in a quiet moment in her sleep instead of all the intense moments in the hospital that she had the previous decade. And after her passing, I was really thinking, you know what? So fulfillment's not found in the awe that we're so commonly sold. But yet my little sister, she was fulfilled. She didn't have the traditional things that you would tie to fulfillment. So it put me on this journey of trying to figure out the recipe and listening to other people's stuff, reading, going to seminars, and fully immersing myself in what is the actual recipe or formula. And then, honestly, on her birthday, the year after her passing, I was running on the treadmill, and I literally saw in my mind's eye a capital G and then to the power of 3. And I audibly said, G cubed. It's, it's hard to explain this next part, but it seemed to quickly stack on itself. And it became clear to me that there are three primary focal points that determine almost all of if you're fulfilled or not. And those are, number one, gratitude. Are you are you a glass half full type person, or a glass half full, glass half empty type person, right? And then the next is growth, and last is giving. And that of all the amazing ingredients that are out there, those are the three core ingredients that make up this recipe. And when I first brought this up to a friend of mine, he thought for a minute and then he shook his head yes and said, okay, I can get behind how having high levels of gratitude, growth, and giving would lead to me having a fulfilled life. And we ran across multiple different examples of people we know, and it seemed to align all the time. But then I realized that our unconscious minds don't tie directly to the formula. They do the same thing that you do in high school. Let's imagine you only have 3 classes. You get an A in one class, a B in one class, and a C in one class. Well, you innately say, I got an A, B, and C. My average is a B. I got a 3.0 or a B average. And that's how we think it works with personal fulfillment. And so we're like, okay, let's talk about the scale. If you do amazing in a category, you get a 5, average a 3, 1, you do horrible in the category, right? And so you walk through gratitude, growth, and giving. And let's say you do average, you do 3 and a 3 and a 3, or 9 out of 15. You're like, okay, well, I got about a C minus on my report card. Okay, if I put in okay, I got out okay. It seems very logical, but the reality is when we look at everybody around us, we're like, they're putting in okay, they're getting okay, or they're putting in good, they're getting good. But for me as an individual at a subconscious level, it doesn't actually work. We're like, wait a minute, I'm putting in good into gratitude, growth, and giving, but I am not getting a B GPA. I'm not getting the 3.0. Something's wrong, and it's probably me. I'm broken. Something's broken in me.
Well, so here's what I loved about it is that part about so, you go through the score yourself 0 to 5 in gratitude, 0 to 5 growth, 0 to 5 giving. And it's not, you don't add them up. So what's your score out of 15? It's that multiplication factor. That really started coming through to me, and you're like, okay, yeah, but what if you get 5 times 5 times 1? It's not awesome. 5 times 1, 5 times 5 times 3 is so much better. Like all of a sudden, like that scale factor changed for me. So my question for you, because as I was thinking about this, and you were like one of the things you talked about in there was, giving, for instance, like, hey, part of the limits on giving can be our personal situation or our personal bank account, or how many, if you're working 2 jobs, you may not have too many hours to give away, or you're in startup mode, right? And like, it's in that way, it's still customized to everybody, right? But I was thinking about those. And I was thinking, okay, where do I not have the score that I want to have? So I was thinking about gratitude, and I thought, I don't like my score when you're going through things and I'm scoring myself. I don't like my score on gratitude. I think that I've got this great life and I've got so much potential, and I'm probably hyper focusing on what's not going as great as it could. So I run 3 businesses in the charity, right?
Yeah.
And as I was evaluating myself, I was thinking like, this is one I need to improve. So I'm gonna go to the expert and get advice on how to improve my gratitude score.
Yeah, well, you seem like one that would be getting a very high score in your growth score and in your giving score, right? And the cool thing is, even if you're working 2 jobs, you can still give to your customers, give to your coworkers, give them a minute and look them in the eye, put your phone down, right? So it's not shelling cash out to people. I mean, that's probably the worst way of all the ways to give. It's so much more fulfilling by giving someone a minute of your time, or seeing the person in the grocery store you haven't seen for 20 years and saying, hey, do you remember this? Good or bad? That changed me. Thank you for that. Just a kind word, right? So that's on the giving side. But on the gratitude side, man, there's a reason that the formula starts with the first G of gratitude. And we can often say, root out pessimism and choose to be grateful. And yes, there's some truth to that. Here's the real trick. if you want to be full of gratitude, there's one thing to do, and that is root out every single entitlement that you have. Every single one. And I know it sounds hard, and I know that this is relatively controversial, and it'll make some people upset to think of this. But think of what if it was true that the money in your bank account, you were not entitled to it? What if your spouse you were not entitled to them loving you in the way that you want to be loved, or your children? Or what if you weren't entitled to a yummy meal tonight for dinner, or an air-conditioned room, or a vehicle, or the blood pumping through your veins, or the air in your lungs? What if you were entitled to absolutely nothing and you truly believed it? You rooted out all entitlement and nothing was entitled to you. Well, then every single thing becomes a gift. Everything.
Okay. So I love how you start off the book with your personal stories because that works for me. I think sometimes I get real skeptical of people in this space where I don't have the context and it can come across as fluffy or whatever, right? And um, can you talk a little bit about, so, CF the eyes in the water slide? Can you give us just like a little bit of everything? You know, Lloyd's life wasn't just all puppies and flowers.
So chapter one, we'll kind of do a spoiler of chapter one for you here. Chapter one does an evaluation between two of my friends growing up. And one friend we'll call Bob and one friend we'll call Nelson. And Bob's has a series of stories of difficult circumstances that were really quite difficult to overcome and were definitely not just or fair, but they were what Bob had to deal with. And then we talk about Nelson's stories, and it's intertwined. And Nelson seems to be the luckiest guy that we've ever met. Everything's going his way. It's kind of the life that we wish we all had. And then it's revealed that it's the exact same person. And that the concept of this is it's about perspective. We get to choose how we see the world. And we can say, oh, all the crap that happens to us, that's my life. I'm a victim. Please feel sorry for me, and squeeze out that drop of power that comes from being a victim. Or we can set that aside and say, I choose to be the victor of my own life. It's literally perspective. And then I introduce that this is the stories from my life. So on the Bob side of things, the difficult story, we all have them. Every single listener of yours could write down 10 things that's happened to them that if someone only knew that about them, they'd be, oh my goodness, I do not want that person's life. Their circumstances are horrible. And then they could put that list aside and they could write 10 things about how the best things, they won the lottery, they have the best spouse. I mean, all these amazing things that would make all of us say, holy cow, that's the type of life that I want, right? But the truth is, there you have your Facebook life, that I like to call it, people that put up amazing vacations and everything's great, and my kids are the best, and my spouse is the best, we never fight, the bank account's full. And it's like, okay, that's what people put out there. But the truth is, we have two realities.
I love what you're saying, and I totally agree. Can you give us some of the specifics on the Bob story?
Yeah, so some of the Bob stories that I was born just like my older brother, my younger sister, with cystic fibrosis. And when I was born, my parents were told that I likely would not live past my teenage years, right? And my sister did end up passing away from cystic fibrosis. And it's been a journey. It doesn't define me, but it's something that I deal with, right? When I was in the summer between 5th and 6th grade, I went down one of those water slides at the free falls for about 40 feet. And then you come to a screeching stop at the bottom. And the lady that went down right before me, she was large in stature. And when she reconnected with the slide, it snapped the fiberglass in half. And it cut off her left butt cheek and shredded her back skin and her one-piece swimming suit. She didn't end up way down where most people would stop after exiting a water slide. So when I said, excuse me, the lifeguard looked down to where people would usually stop. They didn't see anyone there, and she told me to go. So now I went flying down the slide, 40-foot free fall. She luckily had flopped off to the left side, but the fiberglass slide had snapped in half and was popped up with the lower side higher than the higher side. And so my foot went down into the fiberglass gap, snapped my foot off, broke my femur in half, took some chunks out of my hand. And so 50 staples, plates, screws, pins. And over a year and a half later, I got my last cast and plate out, and effectively they put the foot back on. And a lot of other, a lot of other fun stories in there.
The vision one, let's talk about that one.
Yeah, just last year. And frankly, this is the reason that the book came to fruition. It was an idea, but frankly, I was busy with work, with raising a family and other responsibilities. But about 13, 14 months ago, my wife and I went down to Vegas, and I went into their hot tub and pool. And then a couple hours later, I went to sleep that night, and I didn't take my contact out of my left eye. I was born blind in my right eye, and I have a little bit of vision, but I'm legally blind in it. And I have a contact in my left eye. I left my contact in and went to sleep. Well, unbeknownst to me, a microbacterium called Pseudomonas was in my eye, between my contact and my cornea. And because the contact was holding it in place, it was able to eat a hole all the way through my cornea, giving me a corneal ulcer. My goodness, that hurt. It hurt so bad. My eye was swollen shut, couldn't even pry it open. It hurt so bad I could barely think. And my wife ended up calling my brothers and telling them what was going on. And my brother sent down a pilot friend of his. He came and picked me up at the hotel and flew me up here to Utah. And my parents picked me up, and they took me to one of the only corneal specialists in northern Utah. He opened up late on a Saturday night. And I thought that as soon as I got to the doctor, things were going to get better. And he pried my eye open, and I was completely blind. I couldn't see my hand moving in front of my face. And that's a moment. It's like, oh boy, I've tried to protect this eye for years, given that I had one, and now I'm blind in it. But what was odd is it didn't come close to the amount of pain. If I could have, in that moment, if you had told me the pain will be gone, but you'll remain blind in the eye, I'd have taken it. It hurt so bad, literally like I had a piece of wood in my eye. And but the doctor told me that I had a corneal ulcer, and that it was going to be a marathon, and I needed to put eye drops in every hour for the next month. And so the days and weeks dragged on. I couldn't take any real pain medication, so I was rotating between Tylenol and ibuprofen, with no more than 55 minutes of sleep ever for a solid month. And it's the only time I've missed that much work. My brothers got my back, and they got things covered here over at LoanPro. And in that time, when it was almost too much for me to bear, I didn't really have a good place to turn to take my mind off of the pain. I tried doing breathing exercises and all kinds of things. And one night at 2 a.m, I said, you know what? I'm not going back to bed for another 55 minutes. And which was hard to fall asleep anyways. It's hard to fall asleep when you have a stick in your eye. And so I just started speaking in my cell phone. And that's where the first 5 chapters of this book came from. But after a month, it finally closed in the hole. And now I can't wear contacts anymore, but with glasses, I have most of the vision back. And it's those painful moments that when we realize that life isn't fair, it never was designed to be fair. And we realize that life is to really learn how to grow through what we go through so that we can become more, then those difficult moments seem to become a little bit more clear. Because instead of saying, why does this happen to me? We're able to say, you know what? Someone trusts me enough to have me grow, to become a little bit better, to learn something. There's a tailor-made message in what's going on right now. As difficult as it is, there's something that I can learn to become more, to be a better person, and to help more people. So in this exact scenario, that's why the book was actually written, because for a month, in the midst of my pain, I used this as a way to focus on something that meant a lot to me, but I had not taken the time to put on paper.
Well, I extra love that the book you decide to write at this time is gratitude and giving to other people, and that's the book that came out of that experience.
Yeah, it's I learned a lot of this from my younger sister, right? There's a in the chapter of, it's called The Poison Pill and the Miracle Remedy. And the poison pill, spoiler alert, is offense and resentment and anger. And there's a real palpable power in that. It's just really short-lived. It's like taking a painkiller that doesn't really knock out the pain, but does take the edge off.
It's such an intense story, but will you share, like, I look up to your sister because of that story. Can you give people a taste of it?
Yeah, and remember she's in the middle of struggling with cystic fibrosis, and
Life threatening.
it's not going well, right? And she's down to under 50% lung capacity, and it's shrinking by the month. And she just feels sick. She just feels like she has the flu all the time, right? Just low energy. And every now and then, maybe like once or twice a month, she gets a couple hours of spike of energy and she starts doing a project and then she never can finish it because her energy left her again. And it was fun to see her get that energy, but it was also hard to see it leave her. Uh, One time, my younger brother Ben and I, we decided to drive down to Arizona to see her and her husband. And they moved down there, hopefully that the warmer weather would be helpful for her health. And he took a job that he didn't really love, but it had good insurance, and he was a correctional officer at the prison. And so we started driving down there. They got super excited. Things were going pretty good for them. Um, they had been trying to have a child and were unsuccessful, and they had just barely adopted a little boy, brand new boy, and he was a month or two old. And they found out that Susie was pregnant. So, I mean, unlikely situation, but they're super jazzed. We're driving down there. It's about an 8-hour drive to get there. And about 4 hours into it, Susie realizes that she doesn't have anywhere for Ben and I to sleep. And so she asks her husband if he'll go to the store and grab some air mattresses for us to sleep on. And so he gives her a kiss. He takes their only car. She holds on to their only cell phone in case, we can't find the place. And he goes to Walmart, grabs some air mattresses. On the drive home, he sees a boy laying in the middle of the road underneath the light pole. And it's dark. It's pretty late at night, probably 11 o'clock at night. And he wasn't the outgoing type, but he was the big-hearted type. So he got out of the car and he went up to this boy to see if he could help figure out what was wrong and if he was okay. But it was an ambush. And one of his buddies was hiding behind the pole with a shotgun. And he ended up putting the shotgun to my brother-in-law's chest. He put his arms in the air and he pulled the trigger. And from the murderer's own account, when he was laying on the cold asphalt bleeding out, he told him, "Give me your keys in no uncertain terms." And he was holding the keys to their vehicle in his hand and he said, "No, my wife needs this car." And then he finished him off, took the keys. They went to a drug party. The cops, a couple hours later, knocked on Susie's door, and she didn't know where her husband was. And we were hitting some dead spots as we drove down there. And when the cops came, she knew that Brad was gone. And I still remember Susie called us, and her voice was frantic, and clearly something was wrong. And when she knew that we could finally hear her, she said, called us by name and said, "Somebody murdered my husband." And, that's a tough experience. She now has a newborn adopted boy in her arms and an unborn, what would become a son in her womb. And the love of her life is gone because he decided to stop and help some people or a young boy that looked like and pretended that he was in need. Well, the cops had their ear to the ground, and one of the boys bragged at school that they had killed a Good Samaritan, and the cops quickly took them in and got their confession. They both actually said that they were the one laying in the street, and the other one was the one that was hiding and then pulled the trigger. And today, we still don't know which one pulled the trigger, but we know they were both there. And over a year later, the night before their sentencing, Susie was asked to share her impact statement in court. She accepted to go in there in court and look these two murderers in the eye. And they were young. They were, I think, 14 and 15 years old. I mean, shockingly young. And she read to me the impact statement that she had written. And it shared how difficult this was to lose the love of her life, and how difficult it was to be a single mother, and all the things that were taken from her because of their selfish acts. And then she had written out how she was going to look at both of them and tell them that she forgives them. and that she didn't want them to live their whole life in prison, and that she wanted them to forgive themselves, and that she wanted them to build a relationship with their own God, whoever that was, and to build a good life for themselves. And I remember after she shared that, I mean, it's tough. It's so easy to be full of resentment and hatred and revenge, but really that's the easy way out. And it's so unfulfilling. Gives you just a little bit of a relief and then leaves you wanting. And Susie figured something else out. She told me, I said to her, wow, Susie, you're a strong woman for choosing to act and react in this way. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, no, Lloyd, strength is not something that I have right now. I'm very weak, and forgiveness is the gift that I'm giving myself, because holding it back would kill me. And she chose to give herself and those that she loved most the gift of her forgiving, instead of being holding that back and choosing to be full of resentment and hatred. And I don't know of another circumstance that resentment and hatred is more justified. But as I'm not discounting how horrible it is, and I'm not saying that forgiveness actually eliminates the pain, because it doesn't. But while resentment and hatred are more like taking a mild pain reliever that never actually works, but takes the mild edge off, forgiveness in her experience was more like taking an antibiotic that over time healed her from the inside out. It never takes away the snake bite, but it purifies the blood so that you don't actually die. And so there are some great lessons that I learned from her. That's why I dedicated the book to her. And it's helped me in looking around at others, not just her, others as well, my wife, my mom, my brothers, my friends, and seeing, whoa, there's a neat lesson that I can learn from your experience. Because I'll tell you what, I don't want to learn every lesson from my own experiences.
No kidding. What a powerful story.
No, thank you.
By the way, I can't remember. I feel like I asked you this, but I don't remember your answer. Where's best places for people to buy the book?
Oh, great question. So you can go to gcubeformula.com, and it's available on Amazon and Audible, and you can check it out, of course, on the website as well. And we're really trying to push a couple narratives. You've heard me say a couple times, to become more concept. That's really the objective. To me, the objective of this life is to become more and to be something different on my deathbed than I am today. Right. And so we also started the public charity called Become More, and it focuses on two primary things. One, lifting ourselves, our own level of fulfillment through gratitude, growth, and giving. And then also lifting 100,000 Cambodians out of extreme poverty. Would love to talk about that more. And then also we have a coaching effort. And so my wife is a certified life coach, and she has some other people that have generously donated their time to help people that enjoy the principles found inside of G-Cube, which aren't mine, but it's just a different way of organizing these ideas, of organizing this recipe. I'll never claim that the ingredients are mine, right? But organizing in this way, but want some help, they can go and they can connect with one of our life coaches to help them walk through the 7-step implementation process. That you'll find these worksheets in the book, or you can download them for free on the website. If you're looking for some assistance in doing that, you can go ahead and connect with one of our life coaches. There's free options for those that might not have the means to cover, and those that do, all proceeds will be donated to Become More charity.
I want to talk about that for a minute. So I think it's inspiring what you guys are doing there. If there's people watching on YouTube today, or listening at the gym, or wherever they are consuming this, that want to get involved, that want to learn more, where are the best places for that on the charitable side?
Yeah, so you can go to becomemorecharity.org, and it's a new charity. It was founded earlier this year, but Rep Ben and I have given it plenty of funds so that it will survive, and we're pretty passionate about this project. And then there's all kinds of ways to get involved as well, right? Time, talent, treasure. But some of the more exciting opportunities we're sending in 2023, 32 groups out to Cambodia to go on what we're calling service vacations. In fact, we even bought servicevacation.com. And these are the abilities to be the the hands and the feet of become more. And so, of course, the number one strategy is to allow you and those you care most about to go and have a perspective adjustment to see people that are living in conditions that I've never seen a dog live in America. Like, I'm not joking. Living in dumps. They don't have, as far as monetarily, anything. Wounds that are days away from killing them. We saw that in July, where they're walking around in this disease and infested sludge, and they're reinfecting their own wounds, or their home is literally garbage put like a teepee, and then they climb underneath the garbage. So there's some good opportunities to be able to go out there and experience what it's like from a different perspective, and also be part of the solution, helping not get them to where necessarily you are today, but helping give them the very first rung of the ladder, right? We take it for granted here in America. I mean, it's not always this way, but somebody technically can be on welfare and have an apartment that has AC and watch Netflix and eat at McDonald's every day. And technically they are poor, but that's not poor in Cambodia. Poor in Cambodia is you watch your children die because they have no rice to eat, and there's nobody around to help. There's no government programs to help you.
I mean, what I'm so excited about it is this idea of like, we can, I grew up seeing ads on television for charitable things, but in some ways they were always just stories.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about going there, and it's almost like you can't unsee things, and if your service vacations get dozens, hundreds, thousands of people who are better off to see things they can't unsee, and then they make life choices to help our brothers and sisters who maybe are having some unnecessary suffering. What a great thing to do.
It just truly changes the perspective, right? And you can think about, you think about the value of that dollar, and there's such a low value in the States, right? I mean, I can't fly first class, right? I can't fly my family first class to Hawaii because I'm like, my goodness, let's just be a little bit less comfortable. It's not that much less comfortable. And then look at this pile of cash. How many people can that pull out of extreme poverty? Now, I'm talking about from extreme poverty to rich. I'm talking about out of extreme poverty to poverty or above. So it's just that first rung. It's that thing we take for granted here in America, that they just don't have access. And not all of them will take it, but some of them will get on that ladder and they'll keep climbing. And those are the ones that are really fun to see.
No kidding. Well, thanks for doing that work.
Yeah, it's fun. I wish I could spend all my days doing just that work. A little envious of my older brother, Wade, that he's running the team. But we've had some great people come, and honestly, we've had people come out of the woodworks that are donating 40, 50 plus hours a week, not getting compensated in any way because they're passionate about the giving effort that we're trying to collectively offer. This isn't my effort. This isn't Rhett or Ben's effort or even Wade's effort. We want this to be something that really, when we're long and gone, that it lives on, because it's not someone attaching to somebody else's passion, but it truly becomes their passion.
Yeah, that's great. Well, appreciate you being so generous. I know we went over on time. I had too many questions. I wanted the stories. What did we not cover? What do you want to end with?
Boy, there's always fun things to cover, but ultimately, I think it's just so fulfilling to realize that all the things that seem like they're random that happen to us on a day-to-day basis, that if you choose that they are random, my belief is for you, they are, because you're going to act like they are. But if you choose that everything is happening for you and not to you, that singular choice actually changes them so that they are happening for you. So instead of, oh, how could this be? You're like, that happened not to me. Even the bad stuff, probably especially the bad stuff. It happened for me because my objective is not a life of ease and comfort. I don't own that. I'm not entitled to that. I'm entitled to nothing. And so now everything that happens is happening for me. Those two adjustments have made all the difference in my own life. And frankly, have made it so that I want to be part of an organization that is growing, because what is capital? I mean, really, it's just a magnifier. If you're a bad guy, you have more to be a bad guy with. If you're a good guy, you have more potential influence to be able to move forward good things that you're passionate about, leave a bigger mark on this planet. So thank you so much for letting me be here with you today.
So my two final thoughts, and then I will give you the last word. I loved your line in the book that said, I'm going to misquote it, so you're going to have to fix me. But it said basically like the best part of life is not comfort. Like fulfillment doesn't come from comfort; it comes from progress. And I just have experienced that. Like the most fun times are, like progress is the best part, but I feel like I have accepted the belief, no comfort. Oh, you're looking for comfort, Jess. And I agree with you that no, actually, progress is actually better than comfort. Like I like comfort, but so I liked that one. And then the other thing is, my gratitude question. So what I got out of the last half hour since I asked it was, you and I are both churchy guys, but if I don't go for a churchy reference, I've been studying Stoic philosophers a lot in the last handful of years, and there's this one quote. I guess it's kind of churchy, but it's like 2,500 years ago, and I think it's like Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or somebody, and talking about difficulties in life. And I think that I've been using it as my excuse to not be as grateful as I could be. It's like, oh, this part sucks, or this isn't going as well as I thought it should or wanted to. And he says, think about your difficulties in life like God pairing you with a great wrestler, and that by matching up with a really skilled wrestler, you're actually going to get really good. So that's why the challenge is so hard, so you can get so much better. And instead, I've just been feeling a little dumped on. And so being around you makes me feel like, oh no, that's for me. It's me and the wrestler. Like, this is my chance. This is my chance. Like, because I'm kind of an ambitious guy. I like to think I am. It's like, oh no, okay, maybe this is my chance. Like, can I rise to the occasion instead of feeling sorry for myself?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, once again, it's a perspective adjustment, right? If we're like, oh no, why is this horrible thing? Another horrible thing. I thought that if I put good out there, good would come back to me. Yes, good comes back, but not in the form that you thought it was going to come back, right? Because it comes back through other things. It comes back by you becoming stronger, by you making the choice to grow through what you go through, right? And to know that there's some type of a force for good out there that wants you to become more. And if you had no struggles, you become weak. Imagine going to the gym and all you do is, okay, I'm going to curl 10 pounds. Okay, it's not a big struggle, right? There's no tearing occurring. There's no growth occurring because it's not heavy enough. And so there's a certain amount of thank you that when you understand that when everything's happening for you, you're like, wow, I'm trusted this much to be able to grow in this way. Wow, someone trusts me. Okay, great. And it's an interesting paradigm adjustment to realize that, hey, I'm owed nothing. I'm entitled to nothing. For me, that's been the biggest one. I'm entitled to nothing. Everything happens for me. And now I don't have to hold on to all my entitlements. And honestly, they're kind of hard to hold on to, right? Hold on to a perfect marriage. Hold on to a fat bank account. Hold on to all these things that are mine. I deserve a job. I deserve the government to act and react in a certain way. And if they don't, then now this is how I will act because I've been stolen from. And when we give that away and realize, you know what, I'm entitled to nothing, then now we can actually choose. First, we're grateful for anything we choose to be grateful for, and we can choose what we want to be passionate about and actually move in that direction and progress in that way.
So great. Thanks again. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.